on medicine. So here's an interesting thing about medicine. If you think like, how does it actually work? What does it actually do? And of course, it depends on what you're eating, because anything in a way could become a form of medicine. The definition I'm using is more an internally digested or eaten substance, liquid, physical, whatever. And alright, so let's take the heart, for example. Let's just say we have someone with a heart problem. You give them a heart medicine, what happens is that their heart becomes stimulated. The action of the heart medicine is to stimulate it. And the medicine, chances are, it's made out of natural things, or unnatural, or made out of natural things refined to become unnatural, so to speak, depending on if it's natural medicine or not. So this could be like herbs, minerals, whatever, even made out of heart. Who knows? And then it could be, if it's refined more, it's refined with more chemicals to become crystalline powder or whatever. So you're basically taking something to stimulate the heart, right? And that is that is what it does. At the simplest point, you're literally just stimulating the heart. If you eat a whole bottle of heart pills, what happens? Your heart gets overstimulated. Or if you eat like a double dose or a triple dose or whatever, you get too stimulated. And that causes problems with, whatever organ it happens to be. In this case, it's the heart. It could be the liver, it could be the kidneys, whatever. And each organ, of course, has its own function. The heart, as we know, is like the pump of blood. The liver is like, detoxifying, or it kind of works with bile, I think, something like that. And the bladder stores urine, for example. The kidneys, they filter blood and produce, sexual energy and matter for the body, etc. So each of the organs have their own faculty, or the thing that they do, and by taking a medicine for them, you're stimulating that as well, which you have to realize. Now, other things about medicines is that you can modify them in different ways. For example, if we look at, okay, let me just say this. Alright, so it could be a hot medicine or a cold medicine, or it could be a neutral temperatured medicine. So that's an important thing. If you make the heart too hot, you could dry out the blood. If you make it too cold, you'll probably generate a lot more blood, or you could cool it. Maybe you have a hot heart, who knows, your blood's hot or whatever. You can also rely on moistening and drying. So that's another faculty, is moisture and dryness. Again, bladder, you use something that's very dry, you'll dry up the urine. Or use something that's moistening, it's a diuretic, it makes you piss, right? You can also say like purging or gathering. So you cause the organ to purge itself. You cause the liver to purge, maybe gallstones or toxins from it. Or you cause it to gather more liver fluids and substance and matter and all that, right? And the last one, which I can think of, is physical and spiritual. So, certain herbs like reishi or lingzi is a spiritual kind of herb, as in it's how do you describe it? I don't know, you just have to try to take it. It gives you like energy, and it gives you like a strange lightness, a light feeling. Well, the more physical herb is much more heavier, mineral based, more works in the physical body, the bones, etc. So that's another spectrum. So really, like, you just have to think realistically about medicines. Like, what are you trying to help, or not help? What are you trying to, you trying to poison them or something? Like, you want to make them too hot, or you want to make them too cold. And a lot of poisons work by screwing up the nervous system, for example, or making someone overly cold, to the point where their vital force just leaks out of the body, or making them super hot to the point where, you know, they burn up, and it's like, yeah, so, you know. But yeah, think about things like temperature and moisture and how you want to move things and stimulate stuff, and try to figure out, you know, what actually happens. And then realistically, you just have to practice by eating things and, you know, trying stuff out, and, you know, trial and error. Like today I made something and I had to fix it like 2 times. It was so terrible because I had already put it in like pills, and I had to take it out and put it back in, and take it out and put it back in. Ugh, I just, you know, bad things happen when you're not relaxed and in the zone correctly. So, you know, shit happens, but whatever. Got it done in the end, and, you know, it works well, so I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, really all I'm saying is, like, be realistic. Medicine's not that hard. It's been made like a cult to, you know, being put in Latin, being put in all these weird words, been made really difficult just to kind of keep the plebs out of it. It's not really not that hard. So, goodbye. Of course, check links in the description for all social and commercial, and have a nice day.
So I notice when I'm around certain electronics that it has negative health effects. Simple things like lights usually aren't too bad, and simple like microcontroller electronics like a calculator or whatever should be fine. But I think it's to do with the wattage. If the wattage is too high, now this is similar for an engine, because, you know, you can kind of think of the power supply of a electronic thing is similar to an engine. You know, if a car engine is too heavy, or a tool engine is too, you know, intense, I notice that the vibration is not good. The vibration of the physical engine, while the wattage of the electronic radiation of the electromagnetic tool. So of course you can have electric motors which spin, and of course they cause vibration as well. I notice this is negative to health. For example, if I use a tool that has a very strong motor in it, you know, my nerves in my hand and my arm will be like numbed and, you know, such. So I definitely notice this if I turn my computer on and then off. I can notice it's like falling. My energy falls, and then it goes back into my body instead of like being volatilized. So what I see is that, you know, heavy electronics, high wattage electronics, high, you know, just say if you got Wi-Fi or whatever, high frequency frequencies, or electromagnetic frequencies like Wi-Fi and such, they volatilize your body and your bones essentially. So it causes you to kind of spikes your adrenaline. It's not so good. You know, if you look at people who all they do is they use computers, or they spend a lot of time around electronics, like in server rooms or in anywhere high, what would you call it? Like a lot of radiation frequency, similar to people who spend a lot of time near motors. You know, they look very sick. Anything that's this excessively strong vibration, I don't think you were meant to be around these things a lot. Of course, you can withstand, you know, a decent amount of quote-unquote unnatural stimulation, but the more powerful something is, the more effect it has on your body. So just be mindful when you're using tools. For example, I try to use hand tools, non-powered tools if possible. You know, sometimes you got to use a power tool. There's a reason why, you know, people wear earplugs for these things, or there's a reason why people wear gloves to protect themselves. And of course, if you're some kind of super strong, you know, ultra bone dense giga chad, then sure, you'll have no issues. But otherwise, it's kind of a disturbance, and these things, they disturb the natural order. Like animals are not going to rest and be around a wood chopping thing, you know. I actually found one time. That's why I can't use a mulcher, because we've got this mulcher here, which like a small one, and I was actually crippled. Every time I use it, I would get crippled, and it's not like I'm holding it, so I'm not feeling the vibration, but it's just the engine inside of it is so powerful that it resonates to my lower back, and I actually wake up and I can't move. Like, it's so bad that I'm quite literally crippled for about 3 days after, and it's happened twice. And after that, I just, if I use it for under about a couple minutes, maybe about under 3 minutes, I'm okay. But anything more than that, you know, if it's like I'm doing it like for an hour, just mulching up shitloads of wood, which now I don't. Now I just store up the wood for, you know, it's firewood. It's much easier that way. So yeah, I find I get bloody crippled. So, you know, you gotta try to think about this, because you might not know that these things are affecting your health. Like, for example, I noticed, you know, I guess I noticed, well, I didn't notice, that's when I was younger, I didn't notice this stuff, and that, I think that is why, you know, I had a much sicker health when I was younger. Spending a lot of time around me. I've always spent time around electronics and such. It's just how it is. And now I notice, okay, so that's what's causing this, you know, weakening of the physical body. This essentially, it's dissolving you. Motors and engines and electronic radiation and such, they all dissolve your body, because through the resonation essentially of what it is doing, it volatilizes you, which means you're turning to gas, turning physical to gas, essentially, or matter to energy. I notice when I play like a video game or a program, a very heavy program, it, you know, causes the computer to rev up and to, you know, go into a higher power mode, and I notice that is when I can feel it. I had to stop playing a lot of video games, funny enough, many years ago, and I didn't really realize why. I didn't realize that, you know, they kind of made me feel sick for some reason, and now I can notice that, you know, certain games, if it's too high power, it'll cause that effect, and I have to really, you know, ask a question like, do I want to trade my physical well-being for fun? Sometimes, you know, it's kind of like, I guess it's like taking drugs. You know, do you want to smoke a cigarette and, you know, feel kind of good, and also feel shit? Because that trades your physical, you know, your bones, your stability for a buzz and a pain-killing effect, which is really, it's kind of similar, I guess, in that regard. So what are some solutions? Because, you know, we don't want to just be all doom and gloom. Well, firstly, I think is getting wired internet. If you can, I would recommend running wires through your house instead of using Wi-Fi. That's the first thing. Secondly is using lower powered tools and devices and vehicles and all these things. Of course, you've got to find how much can you tolerate and how much is, you know, healthy for you. When it comes to the engine, or it comes to, you know, the motor or whatever, it's all the same thing. It's just something that makes spin essentially, whether it be through oil, gas, steam, or electricity, or whatever else. You got to find how much you can tolerate and how much is okay. How much do you need for your work, for your life? You know, you might need a really high-powered computer to render things. But maybe instead you can use a lower powered computer, a low wattage computer for other things. So look into like micro or mini or small PCs that are under 100 watts. Of course, if you need something very powerful, again, as I said, or you want to play a game that's very, you know, resource intensive, it's difficult. Also look into different operating systems. Linux is a much more efficient operating system. I notice my computer, it's not as, the radiation isn't as bad when I use Linux. Also different browsers, different programs. Certain programs will use more resources because they're programmed poorly. That's a problem with modern programs is that a lot of people, they make shitty programs with bad languages and bad libraries and such, and they add all this bloatware that doesn't need to be there, and it causes the program to be very inefficient and slow, and to use a lot of power and resources when it doesn't need to. So definitely look into, different programs. And personally, I can feel it. I can feel when a program is more inefficient or it's more efficient, just by the pressure it causes on me from the computer. So yeah, pretty much look into that. Try to be more efficient. Try to be more. Don't It's kind of like people who use muscle cars or whatever. Like, do you really need that? Because I don't know, it could be causing health issues. A motor that is that strong. Because at the end of the day, a motor it's kind of an electric and a gas-powered motor is fairly unnatural. I think a hand motor or maybe a wind or a water motor. Like the old school grain mills. I've never had a grain mill, so I don't really know, but maybe that'd be a bit more, natural, or a water wheel or something. But when we start using different kinds of energies that are too quick, like for example, a water wheel is never going to go as fast as a electromagnetic motor that's in a saw blade or a drill, or it's never going to go that fast. The crushing of the grain mill, even if you have one of those hammer crushing things that go up and down, again, motors are just turning rotary force into different forces, up and down, force left and right, whatever. More rotary force. Even if you have a piston crushing grain or whatever, it's never going to be as strong and as volatile and powerful as a car motor. Car motors, you're causing explosion, controlled explosions essentially, which is high pressure, high tension energy. We've just kind of normalized all of these things, but I think that, again, that's what causes a lot of health issues, an imbalance in nature where animals don't really want to, be in a neighborhood that is full of radiation and high sound, high pressure, high tension, etc. They'd rather be in, the natural environments, the woods and such, where it's that you can't get cell phone towers or cell phone reach, or you can't. People aren't doing things. It's kind of like if you were hunting. I think it would be better to use a bow and a spear or melee weapons or whatever instead of a gun, because a gun, it's loud, it's going to scare off the animals. Eventually they're going to learn this area, loud, bad, we're not going to set up here. Well, if you use a bow, it's quiet, so you're probably still going to have more game there. So yeah, it's kind of one of those interesting things where it's like, have we gone too far technologically? Yes and no. I think we just need to start focusing on health of technology. I think that's one thing that people don't want to realize, that yes, radiation of yes, the Wi-Fi, yes, all this, the cell phone towers, they do have an effect. Yes, high wattage does have an effect. Yes, excessively loud, powerful engines of a car do have an effect on people. I mean, that's how you traumatize the shit out of an autistic child, is loud engines or loud tools and such, all that stuff, because they got noise. Basically, their nerves are more hypersensitive because they got nerve problems. But yeah, I think we need to start realizing that things do actually have an effect on each other and the environment. It's simple cause and effect. You can't just put up a giant electromagnetic frequency tower and expect that nothing in that environment's going to change. I mean, the animals are going to change. They might move away. The birds might change. The people's behavior might change. Maybe people get sicker. Maybe they get healthier. Who knows? But, what I'm trying to say is let's actually be realistic about this. See and study the effects. And really that just means within your own life, you take this seriously and you start to think, okay, maybe my health problem, maybe my sore lower back is because, I don't know, you're using an electric or I don't know, some kind of tool, using a chainsaw which is too strong, and it's causing issues with your wrists and your back and that kinetic line, or maybe, I don't know, whatever it happens to be. But just be mindful about what you do for your life, what you do for your job, and try to be more healthy, and try to find a healthier, less stressful alternative. Because again, unless you are hyper dense, your bones are really dense. Because we came out of that boomer era where the boomers' bones are hyper dense because of all the lead, so they're just numb and dull. And they're okay with a lot of this, high pressure technology. But we're not as dense. We weren't born in a lead age, in a very bone dense age. My generation, at least, were born in a very nervous system dominant age. So we're probably better at handling electromagnetic radiation, if anything. Well, actually, debatable. I think we're better at producing electromagnetic radiation, if anything. But we're probably, I don't know if we're probably worse at handling it. But yeah, there are different ages, different people, and we've got to find a neutral middle ground. But anyway, that's all for this one. I hope you enjoyed it, and of course, feel free to check the links in the description, and have a nice day. Alright, so here's a funny little thought. So when you start to go outside of your normal programming, you start to get resistance. Now this works with what you normally do, and it works with what is kind of culturally or societally, or in your country, what is normal. You'll start to get pushback if you do things against it. But the interesting thing is, once you start getting used to doing different things, then that becomes normal, and then you will get pushback for doing things against that. And people will, but just say if you make it like you're always doing kind of weird things or whatever, people will be will be kind of comfortable with that if that is your normal. But if once you start breaking away, it's kind of like people are NPCs programmed by the Matrix essentially. They will push against you, and you'll get that resistance, and essentially you have to buffer it. You have to buffer the things you do with a lack of caring, with confidence and such, and that allows you to do things, to do new things, to have the confidence to do things, and to make those new things your normal. So whatever you want to do in life, it's basically you just have to make that your routine. A kind of common example, I guess, would be maybe a person who is very social or very outgoing. If you're not a person who's very social, outgoing, people will, again, the NPC program will resist you being social or whatever until you kind of become that, and that's your thing. Same way, if you try to get comfortable, if you're a man trying to get comfortable around women, again, the program will resist you. But then once you go through that trauma, that emotional pushback and such, and you are comfortable around women, or you're comfortable around people or whatever, then that's just normal, and everyone will be like, yeah, that guy's he's just comfortable around people. It's just is what it is. It's kind of like if someone's like an absolute degenerate, but they're kind of still respected or still loved by people. It's like, yeah, he's just he just does that stuff, and no one really bats an eye because it's their natural routine. Because most people are just creatures of habit and routine. They are, that's again the idea of the NPC. It's just a routine and habit-based creature. It does not stray from the norm, because you have to use consciousness. You have to use the positive force to break routine, and to break fear, and to break the tension that holds you and the societal bounds, and to basically not care about what others think or do or say or whatever. You have to use consciousness, and the more you exercise consciousness, the more you become a player character or a PC instead of an NPC, a non-player character. You can think of it that way. Anyway, that's all for this one. Of course, if you like this, check the links in the description for social and commercial things, or check out other videos. And of course, have a nice day. Okay, so where you have focus in your body, or where you don't have focus, is where you're going to have blood flow and energy. And this is going to affect what you're doing, and it's going to either help or cause issues. It's going to help you in life or cause issues. Now, an example of this is that I was just studying, doing educational stuff, because that is good. The same way that we train our muscles, train our body, our bones and muscles and such through lifting weights and calisthenics and walking and all that stuff, it's good to train your mind. Having a good mind is better than maybe what we might think. People take it for, what do you call it? They don't value it as much as they maybe should. But if you're not intelligent enough, you're not going to be able to understand things, and so it's important in that way. But anyway, I have to keep a certain amount of focus in my mind, in my head. Elsewise, I'm simply just not going to be smart enough or have enough of a flow to, study language, which is what I was doing. The same way, I should have some focus in my throat. That'll clear up my voice. I noticed earlier in this video I wasn't speaking so well. It's because I'm a little bit exhausted from all the stuff that I've been doing, so please excuse that. But I'll put a little more focus in my throat in order to explain this in a better way. So again, where you focus in the body is where the blood flows. Focus is like a glow, it's energy. So it's like literally your mental nervous system energy, your quick energy, that's where you're focusing. That's where that energy is going. Okay? Then the blood goes there. The blood is kind of like, it warms it relaxes and opens and muscles and all that. And makes it, when you feel warmed up, things are easy. Things are very easy, they're expanded, it's better, it's good. It's why after doing something for an hour, it's much easier than when you started. So, main point of this video, is to focus in the relating area of what you are doing. Now, you don't just hyper-focus there, and you don't just keep the focus there. If all you do is you focus on one area, that's all that your life is going to be. I can have a tendency of not focusing on my head enough because the head uses a lot of blood. It uses a lot of energy. When you haven't eaten and when you are stressed or exhausted, you're not going to have as much focus, which is mental energy, and as much blood, which is physical substance or energy kind of thing, to fuel yourself, right? So you're going to have deficiencies. So you just got to kind of do what you want, do what you can. So sometimes I don't focus on the head as much because I'm trying to fuel my body, because I know I probably got to work, I probably got to do stuff tomorrow, I probably got to maintain the house and such. And the head's kind of like an accessory organ. It is and it isn't. So I don't put as much there sometimes. So that's, for me, I have to notice that. You should notice your own problems. Maybe you have issues with the legs. You have like lower back issues or something, or you just don't have enough strength there. One common example is issues with genitals. Men who can't get hard, or women who can't get wet. People who just have a lack of feeling there. They have hormonal issues as well if they have a lack of feeling in the gonads. Usually sexual issues is generally related to hormonal issues as well. You have to focus there, you got to put your focus there. Or if you have digestive issues, again, you got to focus there. So it's like, where do you need to focus more in the body? Or where aren't you focusing? Which area of your body is dark? Where are you having problems in your life? Try to figure out the relations area. The common basic things like mental stuff, the head is, the head region is like the mind. It's all related to intelligence and creativity and intellect and thought and stuff like that. Throat relating to conversation. Again, look at the chakras. Chakra model's good. The kind of heart region being the socialization, all that stuff. The guts being the ego, the will, the power, the digestion. The sacral kind of bladder region being the emotions. Very emotional, it could be there. Psychic stuff. Rejuvenation. And kind of in between that, the genital sexuality, etc. And the root, the bowels, the anus region, the tailbone. Fear, material stuff, so physical life, physical reality, money, possessions. The bladder can kind of be flow of money, and the stomach can be like the energy to work, so just FYI. The legs being traveling, being stability, etc. So the arms being control, the hands, arms being the controller, the control of the world, etc. So yeah, just notice when you're not really focusing, and notice when you're having troubles. And also just say, if you're doing something, like you need to use your eyes a lot, focus on your eyes. You don't need glasses, or you don't need a cane to walk. You can just focus on your legs more and strengthen your legs. You don't need pills for your dick or your pussy. You can just focus there. You don't need something for your brain or whatever. You may be out of energy and you may need to rest, or you may need to eat something, or you may need to take a few days off or whatever. That's reality. Like, that's just how things work. But do know that you do have power within yourself, and you do have control over your body, your blood, your energy, etc. And don't be afraid to use it. Anyway, that's all for that one. Of course, feel free to check the links in the description. I will have something new shortly once I have finished a few more things, so do look forward to that. And of course, have a nice day. So I don't know about you, but I am always obsessively calculating the costs and returns of everything. What do I mean by this? Well, if you, for example, put some seeds into the earth and you try to grow some plants, how much work do you have to do to grow that plant? And then, how much work does nature or the natural environment have to put in to make some potatoes or some wheat or something else? How much sunlight, basically thermal or heat energy, how much water, minerals, etc. Similarly, if you want to instead buy that from a shop, you want to buy that potato or a bag of flour, how much money do you have to pay? How much work do you have to do to get that money? $2, I guess. Flour's pretty cheap, thankfully. $2 worth of work is probably not really that much. But it depends. How easily can you earn money? So all of these things are variable depending on you. If you're a person that $2 is very difficult to earn, then that bag of flour is very expensive. It takes you a lot of time and a lot of effort to get it. Meanwhile, if you earn $1,000 an hour, you're going to be able to buy a lot of flour, and it's not worth a whole lot to you. So everything has a price and has a amount of energy that goes into it. continuously and currently there's this energy exchanging in the environment. Some things are taking energy and other things are giving. You're listening to this, you're gaining something. I'm giving currently, so I'm losing energy. There are other hidden exchanges within everything. So I guess it almost works itself into the idea of free energy and cyclical continuous systems. If you wanted to feed a lot of people, how much food do you have to grow? How much money do you have to earn to buy all of that food? Are you just working to eat to work? Sometimes that happens when I don't earn much money and I start to think, wow, I'm really just working to eat, especially with the new price of food and groceries and such, which is much higher than usual. It really does feel like that sometimes. So I guess the idea, a idea is we have to, overcome that. We have to get to the point where our energy intake is good enough, or is small enough that we can release energy working and such that makes us more than we take in, a lot more than we take in. So you have to, force multiplier, which is kind of related to leverage as well, using leverage to do things, etc. Just some things to think about, I guess. I'm always thinking about it personally. Like, how do I get more out of whatever? And of course, if you try to extract too much from something, you generally, it's generally a poorer result. And you can thin out a drink, but it's going to taste weaker, if you get what I mean. I think a lot of this relates to the root as well. People who have a very strong root, farmers have a strong root chakra. That's how they can produce so much. So it's related to, if you have a weak root, you won't produce much, I don't think. And you have to do a lot more work to gain a little bit of result. Well, if you have a stronger root, you gain a lot of result with a little bit of work. That's how it works mathematically. So I'll leave you with that. I figure you get the point. Of course, check links in the description and have a nice day. So food is quite expensive nowadays. I've noticed that the past maybe 2 months, my ability to earn money has gone down and the price of food has gone up. The price of many things in general. There are some things went up, like common utility items, and then they went down again. And I know that there's a thing where they, at least for my country, they're saying they're not going to increase the price of certain items till about 5 months in the future. So I'm wondering if they're going to go up or if anything's going to come down, but it doesn't really look like that. It looks like a lot of things the price has risen, and certain essentials, just so the masses do not starve, essentially, they've been lowered, or not lowered, but kept the same price. So anyway, you probably noticed that, it's just getting expensive. What can you do? Obviously, the idea would be learn to make more money, but in this economy, that's not exactly the easiest thing. Not to say it's a bad idea. If you can do it, then do it. But, don't stress yourself into the grave. Don't be doing that. Instead, I've looked into trying to be more thrifty. Essentially, I found the most expensive items are, firstly is meat, and secondly is luxury goods. Now, I'm definitely not a vegetarian. I think meat is probably the most nutrient-dense thing you can pretty much get, hence why it's very important still to eat it.
because otherwise you get kind of weak and sick and physically, not so good. So you still need it, but I'm more or less just eating it at dinner time, or if I can find anything really cheap for lunch, then I'll use that. Another thing is, mostly for protein, I've been eating a lot of beans. Now, I'm no stranger to beans, I think beans are pretty good. They're definitely, you'll eat them and it's not as good as meat. You'll notice that, but it's better than nothing. It's a protein source and it gets you through the day, I guess you could say. So usually with lunch, I'll make like stews with beans and vegetables and just add on lots of carbohydrates and all that. So kidney beans, white beans, etc. are good. Even things like peas, legumes, peas, chickpeas, lentils, etc. Fish, you could probably get it cheap with cans, like cans of tuna. That's always cheap to eat. You mix beans and canned tuna or cheap canned fish, and it's a decent enough protein source. And otherwise, personally for breakfast, I just eat oats. It's not an exceptionally nutritious breakfast, and it probably lasts me like, I don't know, 2 hours. It's more because of the way I set my life up. I actually work after lunch, so I have like a big period between lunch and dinner when I'm working. So I can get away with eating a smaller breakfast. You have to find what works for you. But oats are cheap, bread is cheap. If you can get the brown, unrefined grains, brown rice, brown bread, it's more nutritious, it keeps you full for longer. And yeah. So I find basically the cheapest thing is like beans and lots of carbohydrates, flour, rice, bread, certain grains. This stuff, it's all cheap. It's all very cheap. And if you want to, not bust your budget too much, you basically just have to stack cheap vegetables. I don't know what's cheap for you. Carrots for here, lots of carrots. Onions used to be cheap, but now they're actually expensive. It was $3.70 for a kilogram of onions where I am, and that's not so good. $3.70. Or if you buy them, not in packs, it's like $3.80. So, which is probably about $2.60 American currency converted. So that's just to show you, things are pretty expensive. But I love onions, and I have to eat. They're good for you. They're lunar food, onions and garlic. Yeah, good for those areas. So anyway, vegetables and beans and cheap grains or carbohydrates, mixing them together and making a stew. You're just gonna have to eat more of it, instead, because with meat you don't have to eat as much. It's very nutrient dense, but it's very expensive. Now for meat, try to look at like cheap, find what you can. Like I got a whole chicken that was cheap, that was on sale. Of course, be careful with the chicken. If it's too big, it's not good. The muscle is like woody and it tastes terrible. It makes you feel sick. I remember 2 months ago or so, there was some bad chicken going about. I accidentally got some. It was absolutely huge. It was disgusting. So just be careful with chicken. Usually I try to be careful. Some people they try to be careful with pork. Now I find pork's a lot safer than chicken, especially nowadays. Especially if it's cured pork, that's more expensive. Yeah, pork's another cheapish meat. It's kind of halfway between a white and a red. It's a pink meat, I guess you would call it. It's not as nutritionally dense as beef, but it is, it's more nutritionally dense seemingly than chicken. So, and it's fairly cheap to get. So that's alright, If you can get any like cheap beef or if there's like wild game, or you live near a place where you can hunt, That'd probably be very good right now if you could hunt, get something, get a boar or deer or something. Even if it's just like rabbits, I don't know. It's probably not a bad idea right now to do that. So yeah, really just cheap bulk vegetable, rice, grain stews, cheap meats, whatever you can get, canned stuff. Try to keep away, it's economical to be married, I find. It's kind of a necessity almost if you want to like work a job or you want to, do something in the world to be married, because you need someone like home guarding it, and you kind of need someone to, take care of a lot of the other stuff. So I know if you work too much, you just want to eat like processed foods because it's easier and you don't want to have to cook. But processed foods are actually more expensive, and it's just so bad for your bowels and stomach and all that. It's you're paying for it with your bodies. It's actually better to eat fast food, like restaurant food, but that's more expensive than processed food. So yeah, it's kind of like that right now. So anyway, last interesting point is on cake. Actually, I had this idea about like what do people eat in the morning? Bread, eggs, sometimes milk, eggs may be cooked in butter. It's like cake is just made out of wheat, milk, bread, eggs, sugar, and then whatever else you're adding to the cake, spices and maybe making some kind of like cream. You can make a cream cake or add cream to it, or whatever. You mix cream, butter, and sugar, and you make a topping for it or whatever. People think cake is like a bad thing, but I'm kind of thinking, maybe people in the past ate more cake, or made cake out of different things. So you can make, wheat is cheap. You can add beans and wheat and some meat, and you can make a savory cake, for dinner or lunch or whatever. So cake's not a bad thing. It's just this conglomeration of, again, it's animal products. The more animal products you eat, the more healthier you are usually. Well, the more plant-based products, sometimes, some plant things are all right, roots and herbs and all that. But if you're living off potatoes and it's not really living, you're not really functioning as high as if you were living off like meat or whatever. So of course it's a cheapness problem. So yeah, I'll leave it with that.
Alright, here we are at the park. Excuse the slightly shit audio. Anyway, so this one is on managing happiness and like life, work, stress, all that kind of stuff. So living in physical reality is inherently stressful. That's something you have to learn to manage. The more time you spend online or in kind of artificial realities, it's less stressful. For example, if you're the one at a shop buying, usually it's less stressful than being the one who's making or who's working. So that's one way to think about it. If you're home, it's less stressful than being outside in society. There's more, you got to kind of watch your back. So you build up stress from, working, from applying pressure in life, applying pressure in reality, from doing things, using mental effort, physical effort, etc. And you build up this charge of stress, especially if you are in like a traumatic situation, like a socially traumatic or physically traumatic, like an accident, you will build up a lot of this charge, and it eats away. It's like an acid, or you can think of it like an acid or an alkali. It eats away at the body. It corrodes your body if you have too much. If you can manage it, you can use it as a fuel to get stronger. But if you have too much, it eats you away. So you have to learn to manage it, which is stress management. Now, a lot of people use drugs, for example, as a stress management tool and essentially you're converting the charge into a kind of mental pleasure. You can think of it as like a dopamine or something like that, or just a happiness, pleasure, relaxation, etc. The problem with this is that eventually the drug acts itself like a stressor, where it starts to eat away at you. So if you use too many drugs, or you do too much relaxation stuff, you start to become soft and weak, and it's like you hit the opposite end of the polarity. You can be too stressed, but you can also be too relaxed, and neither of them are good. Though I'd probably rather be, too relaxed. I think that's a bit nicer. Anyway, so you can either be kind of corroded away, or you just like, you fall like a bag of bricks, so to speak. So you have to manage this. You have to learn for your own life, like, how much do I need? How much of whatever thing do I need, of whatever drug, of whatever relaxation? How many days off do I need to manage the stress, manage whatever trauma you might be going through? If you have a very traumatic event, you're going to need some extra days off. You're going to need some extra self-love. It's kind of, some people use food as a drug to medicate themselves, for example, and they physically they take on the effects. They become fat. Some people use escaping work, or not working, not doing things in reality is a way, and they become poor and not very hardened to stress, etc. Some people use exercise as a stress relieving tool, and they do it too much maybe, and they become, either they get hurt or they get too jacked, who knows, So you can kind of look at someone and think, like, how's this person managing their stress, or how much are they under? You can kind of tell what state they're in, etc, etc. Being outside can be a good de-stressing tool, just around plants and all that. It's good. It kind of relaxes you. The natural air and the good energy and all that, that's a good way. But there's this main important topic. Let me try to get to it. It's somewhere inside of my inner world. Yeah, I don't know. I would say if you do use too much de-stressing stuff, then again, as I said, you get too relaxed and your body starts to fade away. It's the opposite. So sometimes take things away, take away luxuries, and see if you can, if it clears you up. Sometimes it sobers you up. It's like if you get too drunk, you can't really work. It's hard. If you use too many drugs, you just lay in an ecstasy and you can't do anything. So you have to learn to, it's like balancing the fire. Too much fire or too little. Too much fire is stress. Too little fire is too many luxuries, too many pleasures. So I don't know. So I get it. So it's balancing happiness. It's happiness and stress, kind of. Finally I figured out my idea. If you have too much stress, you start to go insane, right? You start to get mentally sick and physically sick. And that's how people get, like, depressed. Sometimes they get depressed because they don't have enough stress, actually, funny enough. But if you have too stressful of a life, I find if I work too much, I'm like, is this my life? Is this reality? I just work, for shitty amounts of money. It's just like I slave away. It's like, is this really my life? And I start to, but if I eat something really nice, if I, or do something nice for myself, I feel better, and I'm like, I'm all right. I can survive. So living a really shitty life taxes you. That's why if you work a job that's really stressful, but let's say it pays well, you're going to spend a lot of that money on, drugs, on pleasure and hedonism just to like not want to kill yourself, because you need to, you know, get enough happiness from usually the physical world. Like, you can sit there and meditate and you do it energetically, you can, but it's just not as powerful and as efficient. You know, and the more stress you're under, usually the denser of a reality, the more crazy and chaotic your reality becomes, I guess. Well, the less stress, the more it's like, you know, I can imagine good things. I can see a better future if you know, under less stress. That's why richer people, they live near the beach or they live at a higher location. They're under less stress. Usually, you know, the idea is like the lower class you are, the more stress you're under, the shittier job you work, the less money you get for that shittier job, the more hours you have to work, and the higher class you are, the less hours usually you have to work, the less stress you're under. You know, it's all that kind of stuff. That's just how this shit works, I find. Of course, there are exceptions, you know. There's always like the stressed CEO who works too much, or the lower class person who doesn't work at all, and they live like a bum and they're happy, maybe, who knows, except they, you know, materially they have nothing, but spiritually maybe they're happy, who knows. I don't really care. So yeah, you probably get the point. The summarization is you got to balance happiness and stress, and usually this comes into the idea of hedonism, drugs, pleasure, you know, etc. For me, I like food. I like good food and good drink. You know, that's kind of, for me, that's what I use. And to if I just say I don't have enough stress in my life, I take that away. You know, I don't eat as much food, and I start to become more sober. I put stress on myself, so to speak. Usually I don't have to do that. Or when it's a time period like now is the economy shit the bed. There's not enough money, you know. I have to pull back on luxuries. I can still have a few, but I have to pull back. So it's like I have to learn to manage more stress naturally, I guess, or to not put as much stress on myself. So I don't know. Take it as it is. I hope you got something good out of this, and goodbye. Right. So you should try to understand the commercial reality of life, as in, if you walk into a shopping district, it is a commercial location for business. Everyone there is trying to sell something or buy something. America is a very commercial country. It's got a very commercial corporate culture that has infected a lot of the world. So we've kind of all become like a very commercialized area. If you go to, you know, a local district, chances are most people don't want to work at that fast food shop, or that, you know, whatever ethnic people that run the alcohol, the cigarette shop, don't really want to work there, don't really want to be running a cigarette shop, but it pays the bills. They do it because it makes them money. If you go on social media, you'll see tons of people advertising for things. You know, if you look, you'll be able to figure it out. You know, what is done commercially and what is done out of art, for example. It's, you know, these things are different, and you can use this to your own advantage. For example, just say if you were trying to make money, you do things commercially. You know, I don't know about you, but when I work a job, I'm doing it for money. Of course, you do the best work you can, because that, you know, you don't want to get fired, or you don't want to, you know, piss people off or whatever, but you're doing it ultimately for a commercial reason. So you have to have commercial intention when doing these things. For example, if you were making a social media page for a business, you know, that has commercial intention. Now, of course, nowadays in, you know, this century, marketing, the evolution of marketing is that you have to kind of make it cool or interesting or fun. You know, the use of memes, for example, or the use of celebrities. You know, celebrities were a big thing used in advertisements, or advertisements where they're kind of weird or interesting or fun or whatever. And this is, you know, that was the earlier television advertisement for television, what do you call it? progression of advertisement. Radio advertisement, for example, maybe they would have advertisements in between a song or in between a story that, like, or in between the news or whatever. So they'd fit it in a way, but that was just a pure advertisement, as in, like, we run a table shop or a carpentry shop down this road. Come here and do that. Again, commercial intention. The idea is to sell. Again, websites that are for commercial intention, places like eBay, Amazon, again, marketplaces, or exchanges for stocks, for crypto. Again, it's all based around money. You're not going there to look at art or to look at I don't know, whatever, funny videos or philosophical, or you're not going there to learn. You're going there for commercial intention, for example. So again, you can use this to your own advantage, where if you are advertising a product or a service, which ultimately is the fundamentals of of commerce, of selling stuff, is just products and services, whether it's online or offline, or you're manipulating some kind of financial market like stocks or crypto, which is kind of the third category, which I would call gambling. Again, it's for a commercial. We're assuming this is commercially intended, and it's not just done for fun. You're trying to, pay bills or whatever, and you're trying to do that. So you would use this, for that example, you would use the social media for that commercial intention, where you're making a page for the purpose of selling it. You're not making a page for the purpose of, I don't know, showing how cool the product is, but you can use that for your advantage. You can, again, as I said, with the evolution of marketing, you use different tactics to, I personally, I don't like the idea of trying to emotionally manipulate people as a marketing tactic, but that's a common one, for example, to try to emotionally involve people, to get them, to stimulate them. Personally, that turns me off something, because I know it's a scam then. But you, for example, just say you were trying to sell a car, you would take a video of the car and you would show the engine, you would show, the wheels, you would show it driving, and just to get people a feel for it. That's maybe a step better than just putting a listing of a car up, for example. That's not really, it's not as stimulating or interesting to the person who's trying to buy it. For example, if you were trying to sell something and you didn't have a picture, that wouldn't be as interesting to the person who's trying to buy it, because they don't visually have a representation. So the more detail, again, you put, the more detail you use, the more someone is going to get interested and involved in your marketing. And again, using interesting ideas, like games, for example, or making it entertaining or fun, or getting a way that people talk, for example, about whatever it happens to be that you're trying to market, which again brings in the social aspect from social media. A lot of companies, for example, will try to stimulate conversation about whatever they're trying to, market or sell or whatever. And again, this is free advertisement for them, essentially, which is what you want. You don't want to have to pay for advertisement, but of course, it's not a bad thing. For example, if you have a shop which sells things with a commercial intention, and the shop sells, you're not trying to sell your little art projects or your little whatever it happens to be. That's probably, you're really going to have to hustle if you want to sell that stuff. You're really going to have to hustle if you want to sell your homemade cups, your homemade pottery cups, which have little lovely designs. I'm sure they're a lovely art project. I'm sure they look nice. But at the end of the day, it's not as economically viable as the ethnic person who sells alcohol, because everyone's going to buy that. Well, not everyone, but everyone's going to buy food, for example. So you open up a food shop, you're going to get more purchases than you open up a, I don't know, some kind of avant-garde occult, or I don't know, some kind of luxury thing that's niche. That's not really going to get as much. On the internet it gets a little more, but again, you still have to make it kind of palatable for the masses, or normal enough people wants to buy it. You can't just, you need to get people interested and involved if you want to sell some kind of avant-garde niche thing. It's like, look at the local shops you have in your area. I don't know about you, but Australia's a very basic country in the way of its, but it's also very multiculturally diverse. So we have a lot of different ethnic restaurants and such, but basically it's food shops, it's grocery shops, it's hardware shops, it's alcohol and cigarette shops. What else do we have? You have your more other things like real estates and banks and hospitals and drug shops, etc. But it's pretty simple. So we don't have some kind of antique teapot shop, is what I'm trying to say. If you go into the city, you'll get like a tea shop, or you'll get like a, I don't know, like a cream and a cosmetic shop and all that. But again, it's still palatable to the masses. The tea shop still sells tea that a lot of people want to buy. I tried to sell medicinal tea or medicinal herbal powders one time. I didn't get any sales at all. It was quite a disheartening experience, to be quite honest, because the product was good. Now, I probably didn't have enough advertisement, to be quite honest. I probably didn't advertise enough. And one of those things, maybe it's better sold door to door or locally or whatever. But if I opened up a shop, like a herbal shop, I'd get some business. But if you weren't in like the city, or you weren't in maybe a Chinese region, or maybe an Indian region, and you catered it towards those people, you made it that language, you made it the herbs they use, you're not really going to get that much of a sale. Do you kind of get what I mean? As in, there's a reason why McDonald's makes money. There's a reason why the local supermarket, if you're in America, I guess it's like Walmart. Australia, it's like Woolworths. There's a reason why the local, drug and cigarette shop, they make money, for example. These are commercial, places that are either necessities or desires. Again, if it's a drug shop, or like a cigarette and alcohol shop, they're selling pleasure and release and relaxation, etc. And a lot of people are, they want that, so to speak. So they're gonna buy it. Your antique teapot shop, what exactly is that selling to people? Maybe older people, they like the antique tea shop. Maybe the younger people, they think it's cool, it's new, it's whatever. People who like tea, a lot of people drink tea, sure. So then you'd have to add different things. For example, you'd kind of have to make it like a tea shop or something like that to add on common things, because otherwise it's just not going to make enough money to get by. I hope you get the point about that, where it's a horrible thing to think about, but at the end of the day, this is the way of making money. You have to sell to what people want to buy. You can't, you can try to sell things that people don't really care for, or is new, or is uninteresting, or something like that. But at the end of the day, you need to figure out, you need to figure out how to sell to them, how to get them interested. And again, that comes back to marketing and marketing campaigns, using, video services, YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, Odyssey, etc. for that purpose. Using Twitter, Facebook, these are kind of the normie spheres where common people, normies go. They usually have disposable money. Again, if you're trying to sell something a bit more avant-garde or a bit more traditional, you can go on the Gab marketplace, for example. And try to sell locally. Just say if you're an American, you could probably do that. You're trying to sell, I don't know, whatever, farm tools or seeds or, whatever kind of things the people on Gab like, because they're more of a realistic, rural, more grounded people, while the people on, say, Twitter are rich, young or millennial, Zoomer kind of liberal people. You would sell them, I don't know, coffee and subscriptions to things and digital services. So again, you have to go to where is the different market. Like Facebook is boomers, if you're trying to sell retirement and insurance and all that stuff, oh bloody hell, it's starting to rain, then you would go to Facebook, for example. So it's a different place, but you can of course get a wide field of different advertising areas. And on that note, I'm going to go do my shopping before it rains too much. So anyway, I hope you get the point, and of course, goodbye, and check the links in the description for social and commercial things, and have a nice day.